What do I do with?
Oh. Yeah, grab your goodies.
Doggies. I don't know if we'll need that.
Dude, I'm excited to see what's going on with this. The mighty Kris Keith. What's going on,
Say
bro?
what?
Thanks for coming on today, man.
My pleasure.
It's been a hot minute of us trying to figure this out.
I know. It's juggling family and work schedules and things like that can be challenging.
Yeah. As a guy that had children later in life, what was it like to adapt your career after many years of consistently having all that free time to do your thing?
I was afraid you were going to ask that question, Matt.
And you're like, the truth is I've been in a minor cloning process, and there's 7 Chris's, and that's why that guy keeps slurring his words, okay? One of the clones is a vicious drunk.
Yeah, I wish that were the case. Yeah, I think on this a lot because how it can really put strains on you as a musician. Music is a jealous mistress, and it's a very demanding field, and you have to be that way as a musician because you're trying to dig deep and you're trying to find yourself and find your voice and all these other things that we can go into. But then when you decide to have a family, I mean, I remember. When my first daughter, Catherine, when she was born in 2016, and I was, full charge and doing everything. I was like, I'm just going to keep doing what I had all these ideas. I was going to do all this stuff, and while the baby's sleeping, and I had all these plans. No, so yeah. And one of the first things that really had to go for me was social media. It was killing my time because I wasn't able to do the other things I needed to do, like practice.
Yeah.
And it was just me doing stuff like that, and maybe that's part of my personality where I can't. Social media is a tough thing for me too because I dive and it's so hard for me to come up for air sometimes. I get stuck. Really
and would that
easily.
be more in the using social media to promote your music, or?
Yes, that, and also just following so many friends, and when you're, when you have so many different things going on in your life musically, as I, thankfully have had, you have a lot of connections, a lot of friends, and it's great. And then you have friends and family, and then you have all these extended things. So yeah, it was just hard for me to separate this. So I had to really back off, and my wife kind of stepped in to help me deal with that. So I kept my social media presence, Facebook and things like that. But my life in the digital realm was pretty minimal. It's not. I mean, it's pretty minimal. You got it going on, brother.
Well,
yeah,
and hopefully that serves a mutual purpose for guys like yourself, where not everyone has 8 hours in a day to put towards that thing, and then some people do.
Right.
And it's weird the way that we act like people that don't put that time in don't exist in some ways. It's like, the amount of gigs that you play in a week is something that people wouldn't even imagine, but because you don't get, you don't go bragging about it on Facebook, people assume that you're not around. It's like, just not the case.
Right.
Was there a particular platform that you did enjoy using that you stepped away from?
Well, I think the only thing I was ever using was Facebook at the time. I didn't get into. I don't know when Twitter I think maybe only Twitter was. Yeah, boy, I'm just trying to. I was kind of aware of Twitter, but I never did anything like. I didn't do any tweeting. I didn't get into that at all. But
and was it the scrolling on Facebook, or was it responding to messages of people trying to reach out to?
It was both.
Okay.
It was both.
There's a lot of people trying to hit up Kris Keith,
Right. No, just it was kind of addictive, and I found that I was like, wait a second, I need to make sure that I'm spending time on taking care of my musicianship and listening to music and reading and so when I'm not with my child, so when you're with your child, you're with your child. You can't do two things. No, you can't. Yeah, you have to be with your child, at least until maybe you have some time when they get a little older and they can go into preschool, and it's nice to get them around other kids, childcare and things like that. So then you can kind of get back into some of that, which I did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what did you find when you cut social media, out of your life for the most part? Did you turn that into just that very present time with your kids? Or was that kind of the facilitation of your other time outside of your family that you needed back? That's a good
question. It was that time outside. Because when I was with my child, I wasn't trying to do social media at that time. It was the downtime after having my child. So I guess I'm just a very undisciplined person. I say that loosely. I mean, obviously, I'm somewhat disciplined because you have to be in order to succeed, I think. But I definitely had to pull the reins back on the horse a little bit, or that was concerned, and so I could really kind of make sure I wasn't neglecting my development, and things like that as a musician.
Yeah. Well, then those things hack your reward system in a lot of ways. There's something about seeing more and more notifications that's, like you said, addictive. And I can personally attest to when I post clips of this show or I put out a song, I spend the next 5 days questioning why that number doesn't equate to what I thought the value of this was. It's just like you're never going to satisfy a need for a growing metric that might not mean anything to you in the real life. Like as someone that stepped away, does it affect your day-to-day life to not be on there? Or are you kind of like better without it?
Yeah, it hasn't really. The only thing that it's affected is my inability to keep up with so many folks in the world, and that's kind of sad. I do miss. I mean, there are people that I've met that live, all around the world, and you just you lose contact with it. Even the people within their community that you live, and you work in the same musical community. And I'm speaking now mainly of where I was before Cincinnati. So this was up in Columbus in the scene up there. So
Well, for so long I thought you were dating Kris Keith, man.
I know.
I met Kris Keith in a drunken stupor, and I couldn't figure out what he had told me about his background information. So I started filling it in with my own mind and just let it be what it was. And that wasn't very considerate. But
it's all right, man.
Well, there's something really odd about this career path and the way people view you, and I think we're all possessive of our relationships, especially our friends. People don't want to move on from certain friends in their past. People want to hear from their friends on a regular basis.
Oh, yeah.
And I can only imagine the way that a family makes you reevaluate that at the stage that you're at, because I'm at that beginning stage. I have a spouse. That's the one person I'm going to be calling every day, regardless what's going on. Then I have a family outside of my spouse that I want to keep up with. And then I have a couple of friends that just because they hold weight in my heart doesn't mean they can hold weight in my day every single day. And for folks that haven't moved into new chapters and new eras of things, it feels like they lost you. And it's like, no, things they continue to go.
Yeah, and you have music. I mean, that's a strong relationship, and I think you phrased it really well. It's like it's a demanding mistress. It is. It's a jealous mistress. Yeah, because it makes you and I get withdrawal. It's almost for me. I mean, if you ever had any addictions, I was addicted to nicotine, and I had real withdrawal from music. I mean, it was like, and then when I would get back on my instrument, I was like, oh, I could really feel this, like, what are those endorphins? You can just feel that relief, like, oh, wow. Yeah. I was really missing this, Yeah.
Well, when the euphoria comes back full rush, like, that's when you can really tell, like, this is the same kind of chemical dependency, even though it doesn't exist in the form of a stick or a drink.
Drink or smoke, right.
Well, and one thing I really wonder with your instrumentation, you're a flautist by trade, a saxophone player, you're secondary, and then you do all the beautiful percussion work that you do. Just being in a category that requires other musicians a lot of the time, like, does that make it more difficult for you to get back to this love of yours, or do you enjoy playing by yourself as much as in a group?
I've always been a group player. I think that's different than like your world as a guitar player and a singer. You can, sufficiently produce music, with multiple levels of content. Mm-hmm. When I'm playing a single instrument, I don't play a chordal instrument necessarily. So, and I'm using my mouth to do that. So I can't necessarily have lyrical content and harmonic content. I can, and I do that on occasion, and I do enjoy playing solo things. I've played many contemporary solo pieces. I've done recordings of that kind of thing, and but I really enjoy the camaraderie of a group and an ensemble. I much prefer that. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm not sure if that answers your question. I was trying to.
Well, no, I think it does. Because there's people that have different barriers to entry to get back to things they love. Sometimes that barrier to entry is I have to set up my drum set if I want to play my drum set, or I need to find a quiet space to go play. Versus there's guys like me that the blessing is you and your guitar can be enough to satiate it for now. Now there's a different itch in being in a group, but with monophonic instruments especially, you're brought up in a world where the greatest moment is a well-practiced group moving forward as one unified piece.
Certainly. Yeah. That's what I do at Ohio State. Yeah. I mean, that's what I teach.
Yeah. And is that why you teach exactly?
Is that why I teach? I think that's part of it. Yeah, just sharing that love of camaraderie and the goal of many striving for the same goal and going beyond themselves more than the singular, So more is we're stronger together, to coin a phrase, right? So, I think that's a big reason why I teach. The other thing is just I don't know. I think I said that already, but just sharing the love of what you do, But I have my limitations with teaching, man. I remember when I started teaching privately, and I had a studio out of college and everything, and of flute students, and man, I would just get so bummed out, just because they wouldn't have the same they wouldn't have that same drive, they wouldn't have the same passion, and I kept trying to like find that spark or create that, and man, it just got so exhausting trying to do that. And I respect people that can do it at that level, and I'm thankful for the teachers that I had when I was young. And I'm sure I was rough, but I had a spark. But not everybody has that,
Yeah.
Of course, and for a teacher to help guide somebody and find that is a wonderful thing. But yeah, I had to step away from private teaching. I'm really fortunate to be teaching the kids that I am at a college level, because they want to be there. It's not like their parents are making them be there. Because you get that with people studying an instrument. You might get that with somebody teaching guitar or something. Their parents are making them take guitar lessons. Well,
certain instruments definitely seem like they have an unequal distribution of that thing. Like what's the lowest barrier to entry to making sounds? Like that's the world of drummers. But then the plateaus are as resilient and painful as trying to get a young flute student to learn their tonality. It's like there's so much behind the first note that I can't imagine coaching people through the frustration of that, especially when it's not by their own will.
Oh, right. Yeah, right. Yeah. And I do remember those early years, and it's just like anything when you first start something, it's really hard. I think that's why it's important to start music at an early age, because it's easier to, and I have adult students, they just, they get really discouraged. It's hard.
Those folks have felt the pressure of living a life and having other people judge you for where you're at in your process.
Right. Yeah. And your ears, when you're an adult, of course, are more critical of who you are and what you're doing. And, you're going to be a lot less open to your inability to do something. So yeah.
Well, as someone that I grew up again playing more by myself, and having a band is a great benefit of musical education and information, the nuance that you get from other guys.
Yeah.
But I'd say as someone that still stands in front of the band, instead of moving with the group, oftentimes I end up pulling the group into different places. And I'd love to hear you talk about taking college students, taking kids at this very formative age and teaching them how to mend into this one moving body, and then how to participate with it as the nuance progresses.
That's a deep question, man. Yeah, man. The way I guess I can maybe explain this by talking about rehearsing with this larger group of college kids that I do at Ohio State. So basically, this is a group of about 20. The largest is around 20 students. And there are 4 sections. There's a saxophone section, there's a trombone section, there's a trumpet section, and a rhythm section. And within each section, you have a hierarchy, and you have this like that, but it's a democracy too. You have this leadership position, but everyone is kind of in a leadership position, but it still has this kind of hierarchy. And so the people, the lead players on the lead parts, are the most important point of that pyramid, so to speak. So in a saxophone section, you have a lead alto, and then the highest voice, and you get the lower voice coming down. They're all very important, but that first voice is where they all blend too. So they're all kind of. It's not necessarily this kind of a triangle or a pyramid. It's almost kind of curved a little bit. It's not. Yeah, and then each section goes like that, the trombones and trumpets. And then within the band itself, the larger picture, there are 3 points. The 3 lead players in each section are this kind of point. And that so actually the band can be shrunk down to just three people. And the rhythm section. The rhythm section, everyone is playing an independent role, and within that rhythm section, they need to find a balance. Now, as far as like playing together and working towards a common goal, so that's the minutia. So when you're dealing with a line, a musical line, so the saxophones, when they're playing together, they need to blend so that all the voices can be heard. It's not so much that the lead alto is the most important. It's not the most important, but it's the point of that curve, and so that you can hear everything. And you don't want the second tenor to be louder than the lead alto, and the bari saxophone to be too soft. You want it all to be a nice level, and all that depends on the musical situation. So there are all these exceptions and moments to discuss and grow from musically. And the more of those moments that you go through as a musician, the better it makes you in future endeavors, because eventually, you're going to be seeing those same situations over and over again. So that's kind of that moving forward. But within that minutia, as they deal with learning all this information and playing together, balancing chords, articulating together, staying with the rhythm section, connecting.
Yeah.
Then you talk about the shaping the music, and then you talk about the high points and the low points. What are you doing? What are you trying to say with this phrase here? So talk about instead of just the notes, you want to get to that point where you start to talk about feeling and emotion, and you want to talk about the impact of the music itself, in an abstract way, in a philosophical way. So
yeah.
I hope that I get to that point.
And so as an educator, when you're
Yeah.
when you're seeing yourself approaching the point where you can start to put these really personal touches on this ensemble that you as a teacher, as much as you're paid to do it, this is a painstaking part of who you are as a musician.
Yeah.
What do you do when they're not getting to that? Do you jump into it and talk about it just because it's important for their education? Or do you say the music hasn't earned that spot yet, so let's stay here in the meat and potatoes and work on that?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, sometimes you have to you always have to adapt to the situation. You as an educator, you go on with these high goals, and you go in with these great ideas, but the musicians themselves will make that happen. You know, you can't make somebody go there. They have to go there on their own and with their own practice and their hard work and their ability to, you know, work together as a team. And if it a lot of times, you know, I always talk about, I'm not a huge, I don't have a lot of knowledge about sports, but oftentimes I use analogies about sports when you're talking about bands playing together and that whole idea of teamwork. I mean, it's very, very similar process, you know, and, you know, it's, I mean, when you see a great basketball team play, I mean, it's, that chemistry that they have and that cohesion and the timing and all that, it's the same.
It'd be interesting to talk to musicians about what sports really do show certain genres and aspect of music that's hard to put into words when these things are you know, invisible vibrations that happen in the air. But it almost sounds similar to, like, I've heard guys in the Air Force talk about when you're going to fly 4 planes next to each other, you're not talking about where you are in relation to the sky. You're talking about where you are in relation to the nose. You know, that first chair, what you said, the lead and that. So when you start to...
That's an interesting analogy. Yeah,
when you start to pull these groups apart, what are kind of the categories that you start to build in? Is it just the saxophones in a room talking about the tonal shape, or is it the whole group and then we start to separate there?
There are times when I have separated, when I feel it's beneficial and it's important to do that, because a lot of times when you separate, they're able to build their own chemistry. You know, because a lot of times when I separate sections, I step away. I let them develop. I mean, I give them direction, but I don't get involved a lot of times because it's important for them to create communication within themselves, you know. So because it's not about me doing it all. Eventually, in an ensemble like a jazz ensemble, it's very different than an orchestra or a concert band, or it's more like a rock band, or it needs to be self-governing. You know, you know, I mean, you can have a director up there to help and create moments, and that's kind of what I do in my role when I'm at a concert. I'm there to like motivate and enjoy and push and kind of make them kind of go that extra step that they didn't think they had in them, you know. And that's when in a live performance, that's what it's like, the coach on the sideline, you know. yeah, right. Anyway.
But the term you hit there that I think is so important that I've never thought about for a music educator is you're the one that's there to enjoy. You're the one that's there to encourage them to get uncomfortable, and them seeing that you had a positive reaction to their discomfort allows them to stay in that place and embrace it themselves. Because so many of us start to just castrate ourselves, you know, for being so fucking angry about things.
Right. I mean, I was just thinking that you know, it's a process of personal discovery too. I mean, you know, you have to. It's important, I think, in music to learn things on your own. You know, you have to have those moments of self-discovery and revelation. Like, oh, wait a second. Okay, I hear that. That's the first time I've heard that intonation or that chord. I've never heard that before. Or, So these little self-discoveries, you know, are really so important. And Well,
I love to hear you talk about how that relates to timbre, especially, and tone, because those instruments are, you know, it's like, I'm a singer. That the closest thing I had to compare to that's a diaphragm that I don't know how to use very well. But you're talking about a literal piece of metal in the way that one person knows how to get the warmth in the body out of it, and someone else is stuck in the category of shrill, you know, and unfulfilled.
Right. Yeah. And some people want to stay in that place. You know, I'd
hope not, but tell me.
Well, you know, I remember having this. I don't remember a lot of the details of the discussion because it was a really long time ago. But generally speaking, I remember. But we had this discussion panel. This was at a. I'm going to be a real flute nerd right now. Okay, so I had to look at the camera for that. So I was at a National Flute Convention, but at the time I was the chair for the jazz department of the National Flute Convention of the National Flute Association. I was a jazz chair, committee chair, and it was a role I served for 5 years. And this was a convention that we had. I think it was in New Orleans, and I had some other projects that I had done that year. It was a really fun year. But I had organized a discussion panel with these great flute players, and one of the flute players that was there, a legend really, and he existed in one of those flute players that existed in two worlds, in the classical world and jazz world, in a way that nobody had ever done, and that's Hubert Laws. I don't know if you know that name, but
I'm unfamiliar. But
I wouldn't imagine
I'm
you would.
also uneducated. So.
No, that's okay. I mean, jazz flute is not everybody's forte. But so Hubert Laws was this. He played classical flute, African American gentleman, but he played jazz extremely well as well. His improvisational ideas were extremely elevated, and his sound. So this was the point of me bringing this up, because you were talking about that idea of tone, timbre, and things like that. Well, I put this discussion panel together to talk about what is the importance of tone in jazz, because there are so many jazz players, especially history. This goes for saxophone. This goes for. I think it goes for all instruments. There are players that have a distinct tone, their own personal tone. For whatever reason, Wayne Shorter. When I first heard Wayne Shorter, I didn't like his sound, and I didn't like his playing. So I was turned on to Miles Davis. Was kind of my first introduction into
Is
the
Wayne
jazz
Shorter
world.
a saxophone player? He is, and he recently passed.
He did.
R.I.P.
Yes. Yeah, but since then, I mean, I've grown to really, really love his sound and his music. But that. So there are players that you may not like their tone, but there's maybe that's their voice. It's their there may be a player playing flute that's it's all air or it's not very focused or whatever. But some people may really dig that kind of sound, and maybe that person digs that sound. Or is it a point of just not pursuing the instrument itself, the fundamentals of the instrument. So that's what the purpose of this discussion was. It was that philosophical difference of, is it important, or is it not? Because I think both things exist and both are right, But in the end, it's a matter of personal choice.
Yeah.
If somebody likes it, they're going to listen to you. If they don't, they're not.
But with all instruments and with all sounds, like there's an objective and there's a subjective quality to it. It's like you can hear when someone sings. Are they singing with what you would describe as the right part or the wrong part? Now, does that matter on the subjective? Not really. It's like if you compare a Joni Mitchell to a Jewel to a Janis Joplin, it's like these are three voices that in certain aspects. Well, yeah, you love them all, but there's something fucked up about all of them, and
right. Well, I mean, there's so many songwriters that really couldn't sing. I mean, Lou Reed, great writer, great poet.
The Boss, especially though, when you talk about like
Bruce Springsteen,
a total degenerate for the melody and such a sucker for the story, and as someone that doesn't sit on that side of the fence, I still love it because there's some balls behind the choice, and that's a weird thing too. Like that's why you need a panel like that.
And I think if there's soul behind whatever you do, it's always right. I don't think it's. I don't. Yeah. If it comes down to a difference of tone or sound or singing or this color or timbre, I think if your heart and your soul is behind that, I think that's where it's at, right?
Mm-hmm.
But not everybody, not everybody will connect with that soul,
Yeah. Well, I think there's an objective level to get to before people can notice that extra bit, which is the soul and the person.
If they can get past,
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that we're seeing today about modern production methods, about, when someone plays a guitar on a keyboard, does it have the strange out-of-tune quality that you get when something's interacting with itself in the air? Me and Emily were sitting in front of a piano the other day, and it's like the thing that our keyboard at home doesn't have that this has is when you hit two notes, you have them, and then you have every bit of their relationship and their harmonic quality, whether that's good or bad.
You talking about the difference between an acoustic piano and a keyboard?
Yes. Yeah, with an emulation
you
of
get
it.
those sympathetic vibrations.
and I've never heard that term as like a literal description of what that is, but it is sympathetic. It is, 'cause it's relational.
Yes, yeah. There's a really interesting. I'm gonna go deep for a second.
Please.
But there's this great lecture that Leonard Bernstein gave at Harvard University, and I'm such a geek. So, but it's worth checking out because and there's one. There are several. I think there are maybe 6 lectures, and they're each like 2 hours long. So it's a lot of material. But there's one of them where he talks about the overtone series, and I thought it was a really fascinating conversation. But within that conversation, he talks about where you can take an acoustic piano, hold down. It's like here's the fundamental the low note. That's the fundamental, right? The lowest note, and within that note, there's the harmonic series. You can't necessarily hear it, but when you hold down the next octave and you hit that key and let go, that octave vibrates sympathetically because it's a way to bring out that fundamental. It's a way to bring out the harmonic series, and then you go up another octave. Then you get the fifth. Then you get the octave. Then you get the third. Then you get the third of the chord. Is it the fifth again? Yeah, the fifth again, and then you get some kind of sixth or lower seventh. Somewhere it's in there. Sorry, I'm getting.
No, you're fine. Please go.
Okay, but yeah, and then so that's kind of a. That connects to what you're talking about as far as those vibrations and playing on an acoustic piano that inspired me to go in this direction. But one of the really cool things about that too is he connects all those intervals, and within those intervals is the melody. La 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 da dee da. Is that kid's melody, and that melody is heard around the world. So his point is that musical the overtone series of music, of a tone, of a single string, of just a single note, is universal. It's in our DNA. It's like in our being, and it comes out in that melody. But those notes are heard around the world in the same series. That's like what?
Yeah, that's very disturbing. Well, it's such a weird thing to think that our musical disposition as a species very much depends on the science of this planet we live on. The density of air is going to change so much of where that harmonic series, is delivered at. It's like very early in a guitar player's world, you start to learn how you can use harmonics like that to skew what a note can sound like in the grand scheme of things. Like Billy Gibbons from ZZ Top is famous for something called pinch harmonics, where you're going to play something, but as you pluck your note, your thumb is going to take the fundamental out of there. It's just going to leave the harmonic.
Oh, it touches it. It kind of
and it pulls all of that mean out. So you get all this. On a distorted guitar, it doesn't have the same natural richness as a piano that's getting just what needs there. But
that's cool. I hadn't heard about that.
Yeah, pinch harmonics are such a metal thing, but guys that do it well.
Sure, makes sense. Yeah.
And do you need something, brother?
No, just with time.
Oh, with time.
It's 2 hours already.
Oh, what? Really? No. It's only 30 minutes right now.
Oh, really? It says 2 hours in there.
No, it has a first hour listed on there. Hey, would you grab me an acoustic guitar in there?
Yeah, I got you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much.
Yeah.
I was like, there's no way.
I know. It's like, what, 2 hours?
We try to keep a good eye on the 6 people that watch this program and what they need to do.
We don't want to take up too much of your time.
Because I don't think that you should consume this much YouTube, people. I really don't. Get a life,
Yeah.
But there's something really interesting to be said there with, okay, so singular instruments have their own disposition of that series. And then there's people like yourself and Jason, where there's human chemistry between two people, but also they've taken the time to tune so that they can agree in that harmonic series, and the notes can have more resonant depth that you can enjoy as a listener. Like that's the best thing about a horn section is when it's all there.
Oh heck yeah! That's one of my favorite things to.
Thanks, brother.
My favorite thing in the world is to play in a horn section. Actually, I did that I've been doing that a lot of my life, more so than like being a solo like guy. I mean, I recorded my own solo record and did some writing and I put together my own projects to kind of not necessarily feature me, but things that I wanted to pursue that were kind of repertoire ensembles and things like that. But one of my favorite things is to play in a section like with other people. And to blend and to create that sound that you're talking about. I mean, yeah, that's one of my favorite things. One of my favorite things to do.
Well, and then the combination, like there's people that have human chemistry, and then there's the feeling of you show up and you meet someone for the first time and you play together, and then there's none of that baggage. There's just the musical, chemistry.
Yeah. Especially when you don't speak the same language. That can be really cool.
I've never had that.
I've had that. Yeah. But, yes.
Is that the coolest thing about the academic world of music, that across the world we use one caliber of sheet music? And the fact that you can pull someone from any part of the world.
Right.
If you're looking at the same thing, even if you don't call it the same thing,
right?
It's like we can make something of that.
Yes, yeah. It is a universal language.
Yeah. One thing I was going to say about the harmonic series, I botched a paper in high school about this, so I don't know a lot about it. But there's something about...
I'm not a scholar on it, but...
yeah, but with the guitar especially, like if you split it...
Yeah.
If you split it in half, is that the first of that series?
Exactly.
So that's first fifth?
Yes.
What would that be? Is that the... I know that's a weird thing to ask.
That should be the fifth.
Okay.
And then the next note, when you split that in half, then the next one, if you split that, that should be the next octave. So
of the fifth?
They get, because you get an octave, and then you get a fifth, and then when you get the next octave, that's actually the interval of a fourth, right? And then the next, so the intervals get closer.
Yes.
Yeah, the intervals get closer together, and then the next harmonic series note would be a third. So you get a fourth, so it goes to a third. That's a major third. And then the next one is actually a minor third, which is slightly lower. And the next interval after that, that's the questionable one. This is what one of the arguments or discussions that Leonard Bernstein was having about that next interval. Some cultures hear it as a major, as a second. Some of them hear it as slightly a minor third too. So sometimes, yeah. Anyways,
is there any real? Is there much
brass instruments work on that principle? I mean, that's how they function. I mean, the trombone works basically on that whole concept of overtone series.
I'm watching a trombone get played. This fucks with my head, dude.
Trombone players are freaking nature. I love trombone players. They have the best ears. And
the demand to constantly tune and to constantly have to second guess yourself on whether. Yeah, but there's not many instruments that have so much. Like unavoidable honesty in whether you've gotten it or not.
Yeah,
and I would love to hear you talk
there or not. Yeah, right. Yeah.
So, as someone that went from flute to sax, is there something relational about the fingering scheme there that allowed that?
Oh yeah, man. I was thankful I had a teacher when I was in junior high school. I'll never forget Miss Judy Kane. To this day, I remember her. Shout out Judy Kane. She'd have was it a diet? No, it was a. Gosh, what was it? I think it was a Diet Coke and a cigarette. She always had a cigarette and a Diet Coke.
The world of music educators has changed. Y'all gone soft.
It's changed a bit, yeah.
Drinking Diet Sierra Mist, Kris Keith, come on.
But she was the one that put the saxophone in front of me, and I think she was like, she had there was always plenty of flute players, but she was trying to put a band together, a jazz ensemble and stuff like that, and that's where I got my start. And there's actually a lot of connection between clarinet, flutes, saxophones, the woodwinds, oboe, bassoon, not so much, but still similar. Mainly because they all work on the same principle. I mean, if you make a tube longer and you make a tube shorter, it's basically, that's how you're changing the pitch. Now, there are all these, nuances of each instrument and alternate fingers, and especially when you get into third octave notes. So the first two octaves of the saxophone and flute are very similar. Clarinet's different. Each octave's Clarinet's a pain in the butt. Each octave's different. But they do translate. There's an octave in the clarinet that's exactly the same as the flute and the saxophone. So there are these crossover ideas. The biggest part of developing, becoming a saxophone player or being a flute player, being any woodwind player, is the sound. The development of the tone, and that takes time, and it's a challenge, and you really have to practice at it and think about it, and do different things. You have to experiment, and having good teachers, and listening to people that you want to sound like, trying to emulate tone and things like that. Yeah.
Well, there's something so interesting about your flute playing in particular, because you seem like a very groove-minded person.
I like pocket.
Yeah.
I like to get funky, and I like to
So can you tell me about
to be a drummer?
Well, as you've kind of refined getting more of that percussive side, is that just the plosives that you add to flute playing? Like, how do you learn to manipulate your omniture to become funkier?
Well, I think it's just experimentation, and I didn't really have anybody show me anything, although because when I was working on it, we didn't have the resources that we have now available to us. Believe it or not, I grew up before the internet. So, but it's just, but it's not that it's easier now. It's just there are just other ways to do it. But I would just basically try to like, oh, what's that sound? And sometimes it just happens. You just think about it. You just think, oh, how do I do that? You do it. You just physically, your body just, and that may be partly just the talent, the gift that I've been given. But might take somebody else a little bit longer to go, wait, what? But I think that's part of. I mean, I think I was born to play the flute. I really do. I feel like it's my home, and I love all wind instruments. They're just a beautiful thing. I can't give up saxophone. I can't give up clarinet. I just can't give that up.
No one's asking you to.
I don't want to, if somebody did. But no, yeah.
Well, the additional information that you get on a flute that you don't seem to get from other instruments in that category is everything else requires a constant contact with your reed or your mouthpiece, versus you still have the resonance of your whole face and your additional qualities, whether it's just kind of beatbox as scatting, little bits of push. But it seems like guys that are really free on that instrument, it relates a lot more to them as a vocalist. And like, when did you discover that side of your life?
The vocal side of things? That's interesting. Well, I think that actually, man, that actually comes from singing with my mom in the car when I was a kid. I really do. It's funny. This is so weird. I was just thinking about this the other day. But I grew up in the radio in the car, and my mom and we just all loved to sing. And my brother, we would just be singing, and my mom would always be like this far behind the lyric. Because she's not really sure what the words are, but she knows it, but she's not really sure, so she's kind of late, but it was such a great thing, and we would harmonize, But I mean, that was just the joy of singing, I think. And I really didn't come out of my shell to sing in front of people until it probably was maybe in, I don't know, maybe 2000 and something, maybe 2002 or 3. I don't know. I was in a band, and we were just rehearsing, and it was a wedding band, and we had to play. It was Jet tune. 1, 2, 3, right. So, anyways, and I was sitting on the floor. I was sitting on the floor and just 1, 2, 3, and I just started singing rock and roll. It just came out. That was fun, and then
they were like, "You have to." At that point,
holy cow! What was that?
Yeah,
and I did the same thing. I was like, "Oh, wait a second." anyways, but yeah, and then I just, I always enjoyed singing, and so I was up to that point though. I was doing a lot of like background singing, like harmonizing and things like that, because that's really my favorite thing to do. If I can hear everything really well, but I have to be comfortable. It takes me. I'm not always on it right away. Sometimes I can catch it. If it's in the right spot in my voice, I can follow find that spot that's missing. Because when you're hearing other people sing, you want to find that spot to fill it, That's what I'm searching for when I'm doing it. But
I think guys that ignite the love of, at least being a front man for a song at a time, it's like you find out that there's a character within yourself that you get to play in that moment.
Yeah, it's fun.
That there's not many other places to scratch that itch. But when you are someone that's been ingrained in, I'm a part of this section, and my part in this section is to bridge the gap between this in that. So how you start to identify that note and play has so much to do with what you can hear. And like, what's it been like to incorporate the in-ears into your singing life versus your horn life?
I haven't had the opportunity yet to really do, and it's coming up this summer, so maybe we can come back to this discussion. But so far, I've really liked. I don't know. You guys obviously don't know me, but I just switched to using in-ears, like Matt just said, and I was concerned about it as a horn player because a lot of the vibration that happens as a saxophone is inside your mouth cavity, and that can create a lot of distortion when you have your ears plugged.
I never thought of that as distortion, but I guess you're robbing it of a lot of the harmonic richness that happens in your own noggin,
Yeah, and also like a lot of times when I play saxophone, I hum because I'm getting a dirty sound. I'm doing that kind of when I'm. I know it sounds like I'm taking a dump.
So is that how you get the rock and roll sax? Though?
Yeah, you growl, or you buzz, you hum, you kind of hum this drone, and something, and it can change, and that can really mess with you when you have in-ears on. But I'm getting used to it. I'm getting used to like kind of adapting a little bit, like just taking them slightly out, so it relieves some of that. So it's a learning process for me. But as far as like singing, it's so much easier. Oh my gosh, yeah, it saves your voice, and
I'm amazed at how much it saves my voice. And one of the things that I notice with sound engineers is if I don't have them in, I definitely feel more free, and I'll scream on the mic and I'll blow it out. And on their end, it might be easier because I'm eating the mic more and I'm much louder, But when I
you
feel
have more presence from the stage.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah, there's more presence and there's more unintentional push just because of the way you're feeling it carry. I think there's something about the euphoria of going through the system, and you think about what it's like to be in a 70s rock band in an arena. It's like, as much as that's the shit, it's nice to hear only what I need to hear to get my job done as best as I can.
Yeah.
But then you need to have more trust with your front of house to get you at the front of the mix.
Yeah.
When your intention is not to be at the front of the mix, your intention is to be as reserved and somewhat conservative towards getting your job done,
Well, especially when you have to sing like 3 hours, when you're having to do a full gig, right? I'll say you're doing a duo thing. Oh my gosh, that if you don't have in-ears, that can be tough. I know in other bands that I work with, multiple people sing, so the workload is distributed, so not one person is getting fried. And that's nice when you can do that. But in your situation where you're the lead singer, that can take its toll.
And it also has that.
I'm glad you're doing that.
Yeah, it has the integration of we all need to be informed of how the tools in front of us work. So if you're not good with mixing your own ears, you got to get better. Because the biggest differentiator between in-ears working out for you and in-ears not working out is whether you know what you want out of your mix.
Right.
And there's still times. I'm
still learning that.
Yeah.
I'm still working on that.
I'll take out my headphones at the end of the night, my ears are still ringing. It's like, okay, so you were pounding yourself in the head for no reason, no fucking reason at all.
Right.
But you need just to know better and to sculpt those things so that you do have a more informed picture of what's going on with the band. But, for guys like Jason still doesn't seem to enjoy it in the slightest, which is fine because I think different instruments, especially the brass, where you have that internal resonance going on, or vocalists especially, it feels so foreign to to what you've been doing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of the same way as far as saxophone is concerned. I like hearing the space I'm in. Like you said, like, that idea of the 70s, rock, just that feeling the room and the space. And I think Jason's very much feeling that when he's blowing, and I totally understand that. I think he could. It's just one of those things where you just have to make a decision and go, well, let's see how this works, and can I adapt to it? It's just a willingness to kind of to change things a little bit, but it's not for everybody,
Yeah. Well, I think some of it also has to do with you're working with a new proximity to the source.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
For me, it's
Right.
like the equivalent of going direct out of a pedal board into a headphone is like standing with an ear literally up to the amplifier. There's no air in between it.
Yeah.
Versus the horn, it's like, have you
Yeah.
ever stood in front of your own horn and listened
Right.
to it there?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
no, that's a very foreign ideal.
Yeah.
And I would wonder how much. We're talking about how the air interacts with every note you make. It's like, is the note at the front of the horn and 10 feet away from the horn different, in terms of a couple of cents, flat or sharp, and how that moves in that space? I'd wonder because there's literal drag going on with those frequencies and their projection,
I wonder if that would affect the actual frequency itself. I don't know. But yeah, I think there are ways like I'm getting used to with the in-ears with the saxophone. I've kind of always done this as a flute player because I've always been very sensitive to the idea of nobody wants to hear a high C or a high D from a flute in their skull. Nobody wants that because it's basically a laser beam right to your brain.
Straight to the bottom of the stem.
Right. So nobody wants that. So when I play one, because I like to play those notes, and they're very handy when you're playing something like a style like Cuban music, I get off the mic. I play something really high and hard and. Yeah, like you don't need to like stay here the whole time and blah 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 blah. Everything.
Yeah.
The mic is part of that expressive instrument, and that's part of I think using in-ears properly too. You can think of it in that way, maybe as a brass player. Because I notice brass players don't use them very much.
Yeah, well, I think you're so right, and we're taught how to work a microphone, and people do a lot of different interesting things.
Some
with their
people aren't taught how to work a microphone.
Well, okay, there's some.
They should know better.
I've watched some father the brides mic up their belly button and wonder why the fuck people can't hear them. And it's like, listen, brother, I'll set you up with a lav mic, but then you're gonna look like Joel Osteen up here, and you better shine up your teeth if we're gonna have that kind of close up on you.
Yeah, there you go.
But there's an element of playing that instrument of the mic that I think it relates really well to guys that have dabbled a little bit in the pedal board. And I would love to hear about when you started with that because the proximity to your signal chain, how close you are to that mic is going to affect how much your distortion pedal can pick up or your POG or whatever you're using.
Right. Yeah. I'm kind of in my infancy as far as electronic pedal. I mean, I have experience, but I'm still very, very naive. Not naive, I guess maybe. I just don't have enough experience or knowledge yet. But it does take time and persistence. I did have before I started using POG. I've got some things that I really want to get into. Having a baby right now is keeping me from doing that. But
a beautiful baby, though.
That baby is my life. She's my life.
Yeah.
And yes, she's gorgeous. But yeah, I'm hoping to dive into that, but it takes time. But before I started using the POG, I had a pedal that was a vocal Digitech. It was just a Vox or whatever. It's for vocalists, and it had some really wacky, silly, weird sounds on it, which some of them were fun. And I was doing some experimental fusion kind of jazz things, and it fit really well with that kind of vibe. And but it just kind of got it just kind of got old, and I couldn't really work I wanted to be more selective. So I want to develop. It's like developing my sound on saxophone or on flute. I want to develop an electronic sound, and I want to figure out what do I like. What is it that I like? So I really need to record myself with the Pog. I need to find out, what is it. What do I like? What I don't like? What don't I like about what I'm doing? And it's a filtering process, and there's so much depth in that one pedal that I haven't explored. But I'm looking forward to diving in, and there's some other things. Yeah, but
but there's an element of not being able to. You can't go on board and produce the note at the same time, which is a really difficult thing about that instrument. Like for a guitar player, you hit a bar chord, and then you go down and you twist the knob, and you say this, not that. Versus to produce, like you have to play it, think about it, go down, try it out.
Right. That's why I think recording is going to help me. I need to. I've got a little digital recorder. I should just bring it on some gigs sometime and just start listening.
I think one of my favorite things to watch you do is to be playing your flute, and then to watch you, break your back to go put this flute through your Pog and do something interesting.
Because I've got it set to my saxophone, and it's a different mic. Yeah. So
when I could definitely help out was trying to find a way to allow both those mics to go through that chain when you choose to do those things.
Yeah.
But it's such an interesting push to the front of the mix compared to, if there's keys, a guitar, bass, and drums all going on, there's this huge layer of texture going on, and if we're going to push you through a little bit of saturation or delay for some carry, or the great thing about that Pog is we get all 3 octaves. We get what you're playing below and on top. It's like you can find that wherever you're listening. It's a very trippy experience.
It's a fun pedal.
That's for sure.
And having the ability to affect 3 octaves above and 3 below is pretty intense.
Yeah.
Like I said, I've only touched the tip of the iceberg on that thing. I've seen videos of guys, guitar players with that thing. I'm like, holy mackerel.
Yeah, but those guys just make YouTube videos. You know what I mean? Like they just ball on pedals, which is it's a great.
They get
feeling.
paid to do that. Man.
Yeah, it's pretty neat.
It's a great thing. Yeah.
Well, as we're wrapping things up, feel free to throw whatever you want out into the ether. But I would love to know, as someone that's had so much time with a particular group or a particular song, like you've gone into the weeds of material in your life, and then you have other material where it's just like, I show up and play this with different people every weekend, and it never has that aura of quality, but it still has the musicianship of just getting to go do the thing. Like, how do you balance a life of varying quality with a passion of just doing it?
That's been a challenge, for sure. Just finding like time management has been, really. But because I've invested so much time already, that stuff never goes away. Once you invest that time, it's in you. And once you listen to that, once you work on all this different repertoire. I mean, what I'm specifically talking about is Cuban and Brazilian music, or where I really shifted in my life and did a big focus. This is outside of the jazz world where I had a big focus. I had a big focus in my life in classical music, and playing in orchestra and playing orchestral music. And I mean, that stuff will never lose me. Now, my skill set may lack here and there because I haven't been doing it as much. I've been doing other things. So a lot of times when I'm working as a musician, I kind of I work towards the performance goal that I have. Like, because I can't always because I'm in my family situation that I have, and I have so many instruments that I play. A lot of times if I have a performance coming up, like a Broadway show or something, where I have to play clarinet and flute and alto saxophone or something like that, I have to play those 3 instruments. Before that gig happens, I'll set up a schedule so I'm ready with those instruments. I'm not always I'm not always playing my clarinet. I don't have time. I don't have the time. I used to have that time to always be. But I did put that time in. So when I come back to the clarinet, it takes me, a couple of days, and then I find it. I'm like, oh, okay. I got it now. I remember how this works now. And then I start finding the instrument again. I don't know if that's kind of where you were going with that.
Well, I think that answers a lot of questions, but I think, more directly, how do you balance playing with the highest caliber musicians that are well practiced and well seasoned on something that everyone cares about versus people who are just kind of fucking around, having a good time, like the really lax and not put together?
Yeah. I like both kind of things. I like playing with anybody who has a love for playing. And that love doesn't always have to be. Love is understanding. Love is accepting. Love is what are some of the quotes of that? I think it translates in when you're playing music too. It's the same thing with relationships between people. The idea of playing with musicians that are honed in on a specific craft, or they're in a specific genre and they're doing something extremely pushing the envelope of a particular style or something like that is of course a joy, because it pushes you. It pushes you to be around other people that are pushing themselves, and that's I feel honored and privileged to be in some of those situations, and in some of the guys I played with, I feel so fortunate up in Columbus. Some of the so many musicians in Columbus that I've had such luck to play with. I feel lucky to have played with them. But there are a lot of musicians that I've played with that are just weekend warriors. And I've had just as much fun. It's I'm not choosy.
Well, I think it's a great place to be, and to not be jaded to the many facets of joy you can experience.
That's a good way to. Yeah, there are a lot of musicians that I know, my age and older, that are jaded. And I feel sad for them. It's like I just wonder, if you could get past yourself, your own ego. Maybe, maybe you could find some more joy. I know a lot of guys can't do that.
Well, as someone that has a lot of credits and a lot of achievement in their life, you are extremely humble. And is there any practice that has led you to that conclusion, or is that just something that you gained as a young man from a good family? I
think it's just being around folks like you, folks like other musicians that I think it's from being aware of others in the music world, because there's so much talent. It's incredible. I mean, even though I feel a level of confidence in what I do, there's also a lot of whoa, there's so much I don't know, and on so many different levels. And I think that's the beauty of music. If you're in music for a lifetime, you'll never regret it, because you'll grow constantly. You can never know everything. It's impossible.
I think that's a beautiful place to end this. And let me just say thank you for always being such a wonderful bandmate and contributor to what I do. This is it is a very odd pursuit, but like you said, if you can really surrender yourself to the lifelong journey of being a musician, there's always something for you around the bend, and there's always something right in front of you that is more than capable of serving that need that we all have to do it.
I hear you, man. Well, I have one thought. So before I don't know if we have a minute or two. I brought some toys.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna make Matt play something.
Please make them realize that my pocket is very doubtable unless it's on 6 strings. That's why that drum set's back. I'm not gonna do that to you. Well, I brought way too many things. Let's dabble.
I didn't know what we were gonna talk about, so I just brought all kinds of fun stuff. But But I think what I'll narrow it down to is
Well, I think what
are
we're
these
really
ocarenas. This is a really cool Peruvian. Yeah,
is that pan flute?
this is pan. I got this from an old friend of mine who passed away. He's been gone for a while. Mark Greenwood. He got. It's a beautiful sounding.
Why are they
ocarina.
offset like that?
It's
I guess
because you have
access?
to. Well, it's because you have to play across it this way. So you go back and forth.
And is it totally
hard.
chromatic?
No, this is diatonic. It's basically a G major scale, but it's toned so that you can actually kind of have a minor, or it's really nicely done. So you can have this minor sound. So you get that minor tonality or major. So you can have that major chord, or you can have a minor tonality going in, but that's basically in G. A lot of these wooden things are, for whatever reason, in G and F, but I'm not going to torture you with that. So this is what I'm going to make you play. All right, everybody, get ready.
Dude, this is a deep bag.
I've never played these together before, so we're going to find out what they sound like.
Cool. Honestly, it looks like you just brought a bunch of.
It's going to be really bad.
What's the legal term for that?
Okay, so this ocarina, these are different ocarinas. This one is from Roger Hines, a friend of mine. He got this in Brazil, and it's got a broken leg. But so this is one I think I'm going to maybe have you play, because this other one, no, actually, you know what? I'll have you play. I'll give you the easy one. So that way you feel comfortable, and then I'll play this hunk. So we'll see what they sound. So all this is one note, Matt. All right. There's a hole in the front.
Kris, I think you've been playing a pipe.
Yeah, you can put weed in it later. I'm kidding. Anyways, but this is from Nicaragua. It's just the sound of this bird. So kind of, you can do that with your finger. There's all kind of. Do rhythms with your mouth if you want.
Yeah.
Okay, but don't block this part right here.
Is that the resonant cavity?
Well, that's where the air splits.
Interesting.
Because all flutes are like, they're edge tone instruments.
So is this closest to playing a kazoo almost, where like you're humming the pitch one?
No. There's no humming necessary. Just blow hard. There you go. You just have to keep the air sustained, right? And then this.
They're not going to watch this again, Kris.
You got to put the hole, the resonant hole near the microphone so we can hear it. We just got a groove, man.
That's hard, bro. That's crazy.
Good times.
It's so fascinating to see that a lot of the beginning wind instruments are just like they seem like they'd be one note is the only thing you can get out of them, and it's just some person that just worked with their internal instrument and learned everything they can get out of that.
There's the instrument that they play in what is it? I think it's Peruvian, the quena. I have one of those here, but it's basically what you're talking about. It's like just a stick, and it's so hard to play. It
almost looks like recorded though.
It does, but it's more like almost like a Japanese shakuhachi. Japanese shakuhachi is basically a big bamboo root, and it's like cut across this way on the tip like this is. It's hard to see. You probably can't see that on the camera, but anyways, and you have to blow and just hit that edge just the right way, and it's so hard. And I'm having all this trouble just getting a couple of notes out of it. There are guys. Holy cow! I mean, I heard a guy play "Fly to the Bumblebee" on that thing. I don't know if you're familiar with that piece, but it's a classical. And I'm like, whoa.
Dude, that's so.
But you're right. I mean, somebody with a stick and just.
Yeah, is that crease is similar to a
anything.
flute where it's like you're not trying to project directly through. You're trying to get the chamber to resonate, and then you can manipulate the resonant chamber in that way.
Right, and the way you get the way you get the chamber resonating is by splitting the airstream properly. So if you've got too much air going in the hole, it won't work. If you've got too much air going out of the hole, it won't work. So you need to find that cherry.
Is that because you're choking it
spot.
at that point?
If you're
extremely sexual.
Right. No, it is totally. If you put too much air down, yeah, it's just too stuffy. And if there's too much out, then it's just going to sound like a bunch of air, right? So it's finding if you've ever blown across a pop bottle,
Yeah.
it's the same thing. It's the same exact idea. You're just splitting the airstream, and the air goes down the flute, and it's vibrating. And you're manipulating like how long the tube is. Now there's a lot of nuance in what happens here, and that's the game.
Yeah.
You know, all that working on those tiny muscles and stuff like that. But it's fun.
Smooth dispersion of air is such an interesting.
Oh my gosh!
In a yoga practice,
This
when I
thing
hear
will make
people,
you pass out. You'll pass out playing with these.
and I think that's part of the magic of why those instruments serve such a great purpose for the spiritual side of people's lives for thousands of years.
Oh,
It's
heck yeah.
You know, the euphoria
meditative.
comes when you push to your body. You know, that's when the best relief is. So these things are psychedelic when you're on, hour 2 of playing this thing. You know?
Right. Well, I mean, you do work up a tolerance and you do work up an ability to endurance. It's just like singing or playing guitar. You work up that endurance, that ability to play for long periods of time.
When I hear people do a really beautiful ohm at the end of a practice,
gosh.
it's like you're going for the lowest oscillation that your body can achieve, and then a smooth release of that. It's like you don't realize the control that you need of that squeeze and knowing what's left in the chamber before you choke out that note. And it's like then you start listening to guys with beautiful, deep voices, and it's like, how do you get there? You know?
Yeah.
What the hell is this, Kris?
This thing, I don't know if you guys can see that on the camera.
Pull that into frame if you
All
don't
right.
mind.
Well, this is a very special instrument that a friend of mine made for me, a dear friend, Eric Payton, up in Columbus. Yeah, I used to play in his salsa band, and he knew that I loved playing percussion, and I would play in his Brazilian percussion ensemble and stuff like that, and I love Cuban music. This is a Cuban instrument via Africa, though, for sure. It's called a shekere, and it's mainly used with this type of drum that's got 2 heads on it, and they're used. Those drums are mainly used in religious ceremonies. For Santeria, which is a combination of Catholicism and African belief systems.
That's how we always get. We're like, you don't have to be totally Catholic. Just take a little bit of it. You know?
Right. Well, it's all part of the dreaded world that we live in, where slaves were taken over and forced to do things, and their culture was forced to change. But it created this beauty, this pain and suffering created such beauty in this music that it's just amazing. But this instrument is so freaking loud, so I don't know if I want to.
Turn around and play it so it's not direct on the mic.
Right, and so it's got a couple of tones. It's got a low tone. It's got a high tone. I can't get it. You kind of so it's got a ka, and between that you get this shake from the beads. You get this shake on the beads. I'll try to do it on camera if I can over here somewhere.
Yeah, I'll put it on. I can't put it on that screen right now. But
okay, you ready?
That's groovy as hell.
It's really a great instrument. I'm out of practice with this. I haven't played in a long time, but
I'm sure that would wreck your hands the first couple of years you're doing it. But it's almost like
it's splitting already too. It's got the gourd is cracking on me, so I don't play it that much.
Never thought that you need to hydrate those things or keep them in the same kind of climate controlled spaces. But Finicky instruments, man.
Yeah.
Well-
Anything made from a plant is gonna.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not gonna last forever.
Yeah. Well, Kris, thanks again for taking
Thanks
the time.
for letting me share.
Brother, you are a gangster. Anytime you want to do anything on one of my shows or a
Oh,
record,
man.
you are more than welcome to.
Cheers.
But friends, if you're looking for someone in the field of a flautist, a sax player, a percussionist, Kris Keith is the man to call. If it wasn't my money being spent, I'd pay him way more than I can right now. So treat him well, treat him with love. Brother, you are the fucking man.
Thank you, man.
All right,
Love
thanks
you,
for
brother.
watching, everybody. Love you, brother.
Take care. Sorry, I went on that
No, dude, that was awesome.
instrumental. I just wanted to end it with some music.
You know, I didn't check my phone for the time, so I just looked up and I saw an hour and 48 minutes, and I'm like,
Whoa, that's crazy.
Yeah, so it always shows 1 hour on the recording interface. So
Yeah.
just ignore that. Just always let it go for whatever it
Yeah.
goes for. Like even if we have a couple 2-3 hour episodes, it's more fun that way if it feels like it can go as long as it needs to. This next guy's way less interesting. I won't talk to him this long. Would you mind checking the audio on there?
Gosh, that thing's so hard to play.